Okay, it's on.
Okay, great. We're taping this, so just sorry for that delay. So we have Temmi Hadar with us today. She is coming from Johannesburg. She's the Chabad Shlucha and the Rebbetzin of the Sephardi Hebrew congregation, and a teacher and a writer. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Having me. It's really nice to be here. I'm a little overwhelmed. I thought it was just a few people. And the truth is, yesterday I was feeling really unequipped to give this talk. I wasn't feeling any joy. I had a bad night's sleep, a really tough morning with my kids, which threw me. I arrived to teach which has never happened to me. I've been teaching for 20 years. I arrived to teach at my class running a bit late. I had a minute till the bell rang, and I parked my car and I turned to the side to get my teaching stuff, and it was not in the car with me. And I got out of the car, I looked all around thinking it had fallen in between the seats, but it turns out I had left it at home by the keys when I had grabbed my car keys. And so I had to teach without any of my notes, which is super fun. And then there was load shedding, which means in Johannesburg, you have 2.5 hour stretches without electricity. So, and we're renovating, and there were some complications, and there was so much to do, and I wasn't feeling joyful at all. And I thought to myself, how am I supposed to give a talk about joy when I don't really feel joyful? And so I'm talking to my sister in London, and she is also a Rebbetzin, and she's telling me our husband is literally flying on the way to the Ukrainian border to bring crucial supplies from their community, literally coats and money and toothbrushes, essentials. And then I'm feeling, not only am I feeling unhappy, I'm feeling guilty. Like, I'm worried about my renovation. Like, the oven is like a bit of a problem, and there's people who don't have food. Like, what kind of a human am I, And then early this morning, I received an urgent WhatsApp message for Tehillim for a family friend who desperately needs a refuah shlema. And, again, guilt. Like, how could I be anything but euphoric all the time? Baruch Hashem, I have so many brachot in my life. I have my health, a beautiful family. So Haidul Hashem ki tov, so many good things. And I knew I needed to reframe. And as always, I looked into the Tanya, written by the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, to recenter and to remind me. And in fact, there are chapters 26 through 34 of the Tanya are about joy, the importance of joy, except for chapter 32. And the perspective about joy in those chapters changes the way I look at joy and the way I feel about being happy. And the truth is, everybody wants to be happy. And I've actually been fascinated since I was a young teenager about what makes people happy. And it's not just me, because the study of happiness is a multi-billion-dollar industry at this point. The scientific study of happiness has exploded in the last 3 decades. And there's a whole graduate degree program in positive psychology, and the Journal of Happiness Studies is a peer-reviewed academic journal about happiness, and it's very prestigious, And the truth is, all of the scientific research and data on happiness tells us what the Torah has been telling us for millennium. So according to a review, money doesn't buy us much happiness unless it's used in very specific ways. It says that beyond the point of having money for our basic essentials, having more money, even a lot more money, does not make us happier. A Harvard Business School study found that spending money on others actually makes us happier than spending it on ourselves. And, and people who are connected to a community, to religion, are happier. But why is happiness so important? And so that's what the Tanya tells us. Why do we need to be? Who cares? So just do what you need to do. But why is happiness so crucial? And so these 8 chapters in the Tanya are all about getting emotionally healthy. And it tells us, if we're not emotionally healthy, we're not going to be able to live our best life. And it's important to approach and deal with our negative emotions. And so chapter 26 is such a transformative way of looking at joy. And why we need joy. And the truth is, joy is actually our default setting. If you look at young children, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, they are bursting with joy. They dance, they sing, they clap, they laugh, they love to laugh. And they'll tell you, if you do something that they think is funny, like they'll say again, more. We want to laugh more. You play peekaboo, and they say again, right? You could play it, and they laugh every time. It never gets old, because we're so in tune and inclined to seek joy and find joy. So what happens? Life happens, and things happen that block our natural instinct for joy. And the Tanya says, how do we deal with that? How do we deal with that? And why? Why does it matter if we don't feel joyful? If I still am doing the mitzvot, if I'm still waking up in the morning and davening and learning Torah and being a good person, why does it matter if I'm not happy? And so the Tanya tells us something fascinating about joy. It brings a sports metaphor, which I think is the only sports metaphor in the Tanya. And it says, if you have two men in a wrestling match, and one, they're trying to pull each other down, and one of them is a superior opponent. He is more skilled. He is a better wrestler, whatever that means. But he's feeling down that day. He's feeling sluggish. He's feeling lethargic. It will be easier to defeat him and be pulled down, even if he is technically the superior opponent. That is the metaphor, the sports metaphor that the Tanya gives. And it says you're stronger and more superior, but you're in a bad mood and you're emotionally down. And so it's easier for you to lose, even though you're superior. And we have an internal battle every day with our ego self, with our animalistic drives. And our godly soul is the superior opponent. It's stronger. And if you let life get to you, if you let yourself get emotionally down, you're not going to be able to fight your negative impulses effectively. And the truth is, the Tanya says, the reason why we need to be joyful is because every single thing you do in life, you do it better, whatever it is, whether it's wrestling or serving God, you do it better when you are joyful. And so that's why we need to be happy. It's not about happiness being an end goal. Right? And the truth is, it is an end goal for so much of the world around us. Happiness is my idol. I can do whatever I want as long as it makes me happy. Right? And anything that's valuable just because it is what it is, I worship it for itself and nothing for what it can contribute, that becomes an idol. And so the Tanya says, no, only God is I am because I am. Anything that is important just because, that's almost like an idol. And so joy isn't important because it's essential in us bringing our best self to God. We want to bring our best self to God. We can only do that. Our best self only shows up in any area of life when we are joyful. So that's why joy is important. And that's what we need to shift. I need to show up to my family, to Hashem, to my life in my best self. My best self comes out when I'm happy. So joy is not the goal, it's a means for me showing up wholly and fully. And so why is it so hard? And the Tanya says, and again, written 300 years ago, nothing's changed. We get sad. Sometimes we get sad for physical problems. And the Tanya says, let's talk about that first, because I think that's more common. And sometimes we get sad about spiritual problems. And they say, okay, so what are the three things? The highly emotive areas of family and relationships, health, and livelihood. Those were the three top crises 250 years ago, and they haven't changed much. And the truth is, this is not the only toolbox we're going to need to address joy, but for me personally, it helps to reframe. So here's what we need to do. Here's what we need to approach. And again, this is for our own self. This is not a method to address global suffering. And it's definitely not our place to say, oh, you're going through a tough timeline right now. Don't worry about it. Don't be upset about it. Let me tell you how you should look at it. Here's how you should reframe. No, for other people, we need to say, oh my gosh, this is so tough. How can I support you? For ourselves, we need to say, here's how I can reframe. It's how we look at our own personal problems. We all have our own mail from God. We have to open up our mail and deal with our mail. We can't open up someone else's mail and be like, hey, you got this letter. Here's how you need to deal with it. So it's not about answering, how could God have done the Holocaust? Or it's how to deal with my own personal daily frustrations. And the truth is, sometimes we deal with terrible tragedies with more grit and grace than when our phone stops working or when we get into a little fender bender. So sometimes we're able to rise above when it is truly something, and then we get bogged down by like the tiny little stuff. And so if we believe that everything comes from God, then it must be good. But here's the thing. It doesn't feel good to me. It doesn't seem good. I don't perceive it. Sometimes I recognize good. I say, wow, what a bracha, what a blessing. And sometimes I say, no, this really does not seem great at all. And not just me, like ask anyone, like they'll tell you this is not great. And so from a Kabbalistic level, here's what's happening. There's 4 spiritual worlds. We have Atzilut, Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya, and each one connects to one of the 4 letters of God's names, right? So the first letter is a Yud. It's just a small dot. It's just godly energy. The first 2 worlds are hidden dimensions of godly energy. And the lower 2 worlds are the revealed dimension. And our world, our physical world that we see, every atom, is the lowest rung of the bottom of the 4th world. And so our reality is this low level world, and everything starts at the top and then flows down, right? Everything originates in the higher world and is manifest here in our physical world. So what is good though? Good is very subjective. It's very physical. What's good for me might not be good for you, right? And ask a 5-year-old what's good. They might tell you something different than an adult. So for example, you go to a pizza shop with your, with your kids. And actually we have this all the time because I like, this sourdough wood oven, pizza with like fresh mozzarella and basil. And I think that's delicious. And my kids love this like very greasy, oily, like those big family pies, the cheap pizza. So for them, that's much better, that greasy pizza than my artisanal goat cheese pizza. And so on a spiritual level, we are the 5-year-old kids. We don't have very sophisticated spiritual tastes. We want what feels good to us. But everything that happens is good. We just don't necessarily realize it. We are the 5-year-old that prefers the cheap, greasy pizza to the artisanal, pizza that's won awards. So a good, you ask kids, what do you want for your birthday? And then they'll tell you, oh, I want a sparkly dress-up set. I want a Lego set. My kids always want Lego sets. And so you think, a Lego set, they'll play with it once. They always lose 3 of the most essential pieces. They can never construct it. You know what? I'm going to get them something valuable that's going to last forever. I'm going to buy them, $50,000 worth of stocks. That is valuable. That is a good prize, And so you buy it and you print out the certificate and you put it in a nice box with a bow, and the kid rips it open expecting his $25 Lego set. They're more expensive. Let's say $40 Lego set. And all they see is a piece of paper. And the kid's crying. They're so upset. Where's my Lego set? What am I going to do with a piece of paper? They want the sparkly dress up set. They want the doll. They don't want $50,000 of stock or even $50,000 worth of cash, even though objectively, inherently, it's much more valuable. It's much better. Revealed good in this world, it's the Lego set. It's the sparkly toy. It's the dress up. It looks good. It feels good in the moment. It often breaks, When God gives us a challenge, it's the $50,000 stock certificate. But our eyes, we don't see it. Why? Why does it look that way to us? Because challenges, they come from the higher worlds, and they don't travel through a series of worlds, through a series of coverings that make it look appealing to us. When we engage in a challenge, we are engaging with a much higher level of God. So when we are facing a challenge, and again, this is only for ourselves, we need to reframe and say, this is an opportunity to connect with such a high level of God. And it might shift our entire headspace. But the first thing we need to do is ask ourselves a question, and it's essential. And the question is, would you rather have an easy, pleasurable life, or would you rather have a life of closeness to God? If you want an easy life, this isn't going to help you. But if you want a life of connection, then this is important. As a Jew, you're here because you want to connect to Hashem. And so you ask yourself, do I want comfort or connection? And so, again, no one can answer that question except for yourself. But we know that in life, if you go to the gym, I love to do this. My husband makes fun of me. I like choose the easiest things when I work out. Like I'm walking on a slow level. I'm using my kids like 1 kilo weights. And he's like, that's not, You're not going to get very far doing this. I'm like, I know, but I don't like when I get all sweaty and out of breath. And he's always like, that's kind of the point. Like, that's kind of the point of the exercise, is that sweat, that like exertion, your face being all red, that's how you know it's working. That's how your body gets stronger. That's the only way. But the truth is, we say, I want comfort and connection. I want both. What do you mean? I have to choose? And so the truth is, in this world, sometimes we have to choose. And that's why we want Mashiach for, because there's not going to be that choice. And so, but when we can approach challenges and suffering and say, this is an opportunity to connect with the deepest level of God, then you can let go of the suffering. But there might still be pain. Pain is not an emotion. It's a sensation. I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm pain, right? It's an automatic response. Like I touch a stove and it burns, it hurts. So I'm going to feel that pain. Even with this attitude of everything's from God, there's still going to be pain. And we need to understand why we're feeling pain. It's a stimulus response, but you can control the stories that you tell yourself and the judgment that you have from the pain, right? When you have the perspective that my challenges are opportunities to connect, you'll feel pain, but not necessarily suffering. It's like, in South Africa, there's this really intense endurance race. I think it's a double marathon. I don't know. It's called the Comrades. And every year people fly, they train for the Comrades. It's this 90-kilometer run. It's like pretty intense. People, it's a life goal, you know. And if you see the videos, the next day they get on the plane to come back to Johannesburg, and they have to like lower themselves down in the chair. They're hobbling onto the plane. They are physically in so much physical pain because our bodies are not made to run 90 kilometers in a few hours. But are they sad? Are they depressed about their pain? No, they're euphoric. They're so happy because they ran the Comrades. They did it. It's amazing. It's a double marathon or whatever it is. They are so happy because pain is not sadness. So you can be in a situation that's causing you physical or emotional pain. You just had a baby. Your stomach is on fire. I've had very difficult C-sections where it's been tremendously painful, and the physical pain is real. And you need to treat, I like to treat it with pain meds, but you need to address and deal with the pain. But what's your inner emotion? It's joy, because I have a child. So the pain, yeah, it's there. It's a reaction. It's a response to birthing a human being, right? Pain is understanding that this is a stimulus response to a painful situation, emotional or physical. Suffering is the stories you tell ourselves about it. When we get stuck in the past, when we worry about the future, if something is painful, it's painful. But when we are put against a challenge, we need to recognize it's hard and it's pain. But we also need to recognize that this challenge is a super potent expression of God that didn't go through all those concealments and wrappings to make it look good for our 5-year-old spiritual, taste. And we have this incredible opportunity for connection. And suffering comes from the stories we tell ourselves. I can't do this. I'm never going to get better. This is so unfair. But when we say, oh, this is an opportunity to connect, it's a connection point. Never should be a breaking point. And, we need to recognize it's the $50,000 stock certificate versus the Lego set. And so when we hit a material challenge, we need to feel our feelings. That's the pain. We need to say, it hurts, but I get to connect. It's an opportunity. And we can access this higher level of God from the top two letters, the Yud and the Hey of God's names, before it starts coming into this world of concealment. And that's one of the reasons we pray for Mashiach, because we'll be able to have that level of connection with God, the feeling of revealed God with that comes through the concealed good. We're able to combine that. It will look good and feel good for us. And again, that those higher levels of godliness are coming down into this world in a way that is not palatable to this world, because it didn't go through the typical journey of what we find in this world. It didn't go through the journey of concealment, of the trappings of this physical world to make it appealing to us. Our revealed world, this manifest world, is plagued by polarity. We only have north because of south. We only have light because of dark, sweetness because of bitterness, pleasure because of pain, right? And the first two letters are a yud and a hey. Those are God, where a yud, there's no polarity. It's just one dot. The reality, it's just being. It's just God before he manifests in the dualities that we are familiar with. And when we shift our consciousness to align with the unrevealed world, with these higher spiritual worlds, it's not about feeling pain or pleasure. It's about expressing God. Pain is unpleasant, but ultimately it's also an expression of God. When we are focused on pleasure, sometimes it's harder to connect with God because our enjoyment draws us away from our awareness of God. And so any misfortune that we have in this physical world, whether it's financial or in our relationships or in our health, God forbid, don't hide the pain. That's never effective. Acknowledge the pain. It's a reaction. But draw yourself away from the narrative that it needs to be something that is a suffering. Recognize I get to connect with a level of God before it was enclosed in all the concealments of this world. But what about, I feel guilty, I feel sad about my poor behavior that I've had in the past, my poor spiritual behavior. I have guilt. And sometimes we feel guilty about our past behavior. And the Tanya says, guilt, that's a very unproductive emotion. You did something wrong and you feel bad about it, but guilt is actually a toxic emotion and we need to get rid of it. And we actually like to feel guilty. You know why? Because sometimes guilt kind of it gets us off the hook. It's easier to feel guilty about something than to actually, and feel bad about myself than to actually change myself. So I don't have to change. I just feel so bad about it, right? I feel so bad. I feel terrible. Don't feel so terrible. Effective change, effective growth. Oh, can I just feel bad about it? That's a lot. That's easier, you know? And the Tanya says, no, because this is how guilt works. So our Yetzer Hara, it's very sneaky. It's always in your head telling us to do the wrong thing, but not in an obvious way. It comes in the form of telling you you're not doing enough, or you should do nothing because you're already doing nothing, right? It's every person's Yetzer Hara knows their weak points, and it will be like, hey, right? And so it often comes cloaked in like this pious garb. So how do we know? And I feel bad about the past. So isn't that a good thing to feel bad about the past? So how do I know if it's the Yetzer Hara trying to just trick me? So here's what the Tanya says. If you ever have a thought of feeling bad about the past, and it's at a random time, you're making dinner, you're sitting talking with a friend, you're at work, whatever, and then you have this like, oh, I feel so bad about what happened yesterday. Oh, I feel terrible about what I said to that person last week. Oh, the Tanya says, guess what? If it pops into your head at a random time, dead giveaway. It's from the Yetzer Hara. Because why is it coming at a random time? It's not productive. Can't do anything about it. You can't change it. So why are you having this random thought pop into your head about, ooh, I said something so rude to someone yesterday. I didn't mean to, but I feel terrible, right? Trying to trap you into the guilt cycle. What's the guilt cycle? I feel bad because I did something wrong. I genuinely did something wrong. I made the wrong choice. And that's why it works, because it works. And so now I'm feeling really bad. So I have this unpleasant feeling, this kind of emotional pain. And then I have a low sense of self-worth. How could I have done that? I'm a good for nothing. How did I make this bad choice? I don't feel good about myself. I feel bad. So now I want to feel better, right? Nobody likes to feel like that. So I'm looking for a release, an indulgent. So what we usually do is we go and do something that we think will make us feel better. But it's usually 9 times out of 10, it's a temporary release, a distraction, an indulgence, a pleasure. Usually when we feel bad about ourselves, our decision-making process, we don't make good choices. So we often do things to feel better that are actually worse than the original thing we did that made us feel bad. So now we have something worse to feel bad about. I feel bad because I snapped at my kids this morning. I feel bad. I shouldn't have. Now I'm feeling bad about myself in general. Ooh, I want to make myself feel better. So now I'm going to go do something totally self-indulgent to feel better. And now I'm going to waste the 2 hours I had when I'm supposed to freelance working. And now my kids are coming home. Now I feel even worse. Not only did I snap at my kids this morning, I wasted all my time today. So now I'm like a terrible person. And then you just sink deeper and deeper into this guilt cycle, right? And so if we recognize the beginning of the cycle, then we know what to do. The Yetzer Hara comes in and says, ooh, you know that thing you did last week? You need to feel really bad about it right now while you're at work, while you're doing this. No, what you need to do is tell yourself, oh, thanks. I actually have a time when I think about the bad things that I've done. I have a specific time for that. We'll have to park that thought and come back to that tonight. Because every night at the end of the day, I self-reflect and I think about, hey, where could I have done? Oh, I snapped at my kids this morning. Not great. Okay, what do I need to do to make sure that's different? So I just tell my Yetzer Hara, oh, I don't need to explore this thought. As soon as it pops into my head, I know, because it's random, because it's not appropriate for the time, it's not going to be productive. It's not going to take you anywhere positive. And don't get into this guilt meditation. Okay. And what should you do? I'm going to think about this. I have a time at the end of every week. I have a time at night when I say Kriya Shema. I have a set time where I think about and reflect on my actions. And I'm going to park that and come back. And you know what? It often doesn't come back, because it really is just the Yetzer Hara trying to distract us from what we needed to do. Because when it is the actual time to take stock, we don't feel guilty. We don't feel bad. We just feel reflective. So the Tanya says, if you are able to shake the physical challenges in life and reframe them as opportunities for connection with the deepest aspect of God, and if you are able to shake the guilt that we have over our past behavior that maybe wasn't where it should have been, and reframe that and remember, oh, that it's just the Yetzer Hara trying to get me down, and I won't fall into this guilt trap. I will reflect on that when I have time for reflection at the appropriate time. The Alter Rebbe says, if you can do those two things, you will change the way you feel about yourselves. Because what puts us down is our stress and worries over the physical challenges that we face, which are very real, and the way we view ourselves, that we don't feel good about ourselves. And if we can take and change those two internal reflections and reframe them and remind ourselves that everything we do, even our mistakes, are opportunities for connection, because guess what? Every time I make a mistake, I do the wrong thing, and then I have the opportunity to fix it and to reframe and to reflect. That's also an opportunity for connection with God. Nothing is devoid of a space of God. Even our mistakes are opportunities for connections. And so when we reframe and when we focus on God and we focus on the opportunity for connection, and be present and be honest, who we are, where we're going, what our goals are. I want to live a life of connection. Is this something that's blocking me from connection? No, it's an opportunity for greater connection. Then that will help us stay in this real state of joy, not because joy is the goal, but because then we show up with our very best self to Hashem and to what we need to do in every aspect of our lives. Does anyone have any questions?
I only had a statement. Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, Temmi, that was incredible. It was so meaningful and so insightful. And I feel like I had to sit